Thanks so much for joining us today. God wants to do so much for you and through you, and we'd love to hear about it. Take a moment to send your story to stories@parkerhill.org. And if you'd like to partner with us financially, you can do that by going to parkerhill.org/give and choose the giving option that works best for you. Well, thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoy today's message.
Welcome, everybody. Hope you've been enjoying this beautiful weekend, and I'm so glad that you've taken time out of your weekend to be here at Parker Hill. Whether you're joining us at one of our 3 physical locations or joining us online, great to have you guys with us today as we continue this series called Flip the Script. And during this teaching series, we're talking about the mental script that we write every day for our lives. We're talking about the things that we say to ourselves, about ourselves, that running dialogue that just kind of goes through our minds every single day. And I believe that the things we say to ourselves about ourselves can have a tremendous influence on shaping our future. And as I was preparing for this message, I came across an interesting article by Adam Alter, who's a professor at New York University, and he's done some research into what's called nominative determinism, which is a very fancy way of saying this. It literally means this: name-driven outcome. Because there's a theory that says that whatever name you were given or whatever name you call yourself, that name has the power to shape your future, even to the point of even affecting what you choose to do for a vocation. So I'll give you some examples just so you can see how this works. I'll put some pictures and some names of real people up on the screens, and when you see it, your job is to guess the occupation of that person, okay? So I'll give you 6 of them. If you want to make it a little bit more fun, you can turn to somebody next to you and venture a guess or wager a few bucks or whatever you want to do, okay? So here's the first one. This is Dr. Randall Toothaker. What do you suppose he does for a living? Yeah, he's a dentist. Okay, very good. That was an easy one. Okay, here's the next one. Amy Freeze, a TV weather forecaster, a meteorologist. That's right, that is not her stage name. That is her real name all of her life. Okay, here's the third one. Lane Beachley. Turn to somebody next to you and guess what Lane Beachley is known for. Okay, she's a surfer. 7-time world champion surfer named Lane Beachley. And how about this guy? He's also very well known in a particular sport. His name is Stephen Robotham. What do you think he does? Yeah, he's part of the British rowing team. They actually won a bronze medal in the last Summer Olympics. Okay, this one's an easy one here. Dr. Scott Pett. What kind of doctor do you suppose he is? Yeah, he's a veterinarian. And the last one's a giveaway. This is Usain Bolt. The fastest man in the world, he's called, especially in the 100-meter and 200-meter. Nobody's ever broken his record. And so the way that Adam Alter summarizes his findings is he says this: researchers have shown that our names take root deep within our mental worlds, drawing us magnetically toward the concepts they embody. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if your name can influence the career that you choose. And I have a suspicion that Usain Bolt would be a fast runner, even if that weren't his last name, even if his last name were Tripp. I think he'd still be a fast runner. But I think it is true that what we say to ourselves about ourselves every single day, that inner dialogue that runs every single day beneath the surface of our lives, that has the ability to shape the way we see ourselves and the way that we live. I love the way that author Paul Tripp says it. We read this quote last week. He says, "No one is more influential than your life than you are, because no one talks to you more than you do. You are in an unending conversation with yourself. You are talking to yourself all the time, interpreting, organizing, and analyzing what's going on inside you and around you." And that's true, isn't it? I mean, we all know this is true. And I think this is why David in Psalm 19, at the very end of Psalm 19, he includes this very simple prayer that I think every follower of Christ ought to commit to memory and pray on a regular basis. David said this, he said, "May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer." In other words, may the words that I speak and the thoughts that I think, whether they're spoken to someone else and thought about someone else, or spoken to myself and thought about myself, may they be pleasing in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Because here's the thing, we choose what thoughts to consume, but sometimes the thoughts that we consume can begin to consume us. And so we've entitled this series, Flip the Script. And that phrase, flip the script, actually comes from the world of writing and storytelling. It's used to describe that moment in a story when things go in a completely different direction than what was expected. You know, when the bad guy becomes the hero, when the victim becomes the victor, when the stepdaughter becomes the princess, you know, when everything in the plot changes and the script gets flipped. And here's the thing, sometimes what we need to do in our lives is we've just got to flip the script. We've got to begin telling ourselves a different narrative. We've got to begin saying some things to ourselves, about ourselves, that are pleasing in the sight of the Lord, our rock and our redeemer. We've got to stop believing the lies and start speaking the truth that will set us free. Because the fact is, a lot of us, as we go through life, we believe lies. And we don't know they're lies. Because if we knew they were lies, we wouldn't believe them. But we believe lies sometimes. And here's the thing about a lie. When a lie is believed as truth, it has the same effect as if it were true. In other words, even when something isn't true, if we believe it's true, it still shapes our lives and sometimes dictates our actions, right? I'll give you kind of a silly, simple example of this, of how a lie can have the power of truth when we believe it. And here's my silly example. Carrots, okay? When you want to motivate your kids to eat carrots, if you're a parent, what do you say to your kids? You say to your kids, you need to eat your carrots because they will improve your eyesight. Yeah, carrots will improve your eyesight, which is a good thing, but it's actually not true. That is a lie that we tell our kids to get them to eat what we've prepared for them. It's really not true. In fact, I traced this back. I did a little bit of research on this, and this idea that carrots will improve your eyesight is actually rooted in World War II propaganda. Because during World War II, the British Air Force began using a new technology, onboard radar, on their airplanes, which gave them a great advantage over the German bombers, especially at night. But they didn't want the Germans to figure out that they had this new technology, so they had to come up with a way to explain their success in the air. And so they began to spread the word that British soldiers had superior eyesight because they ate so many carrots. In fact, there were posters that were circulated during World War II about this. And so now for generations, right, for generations, people have been eating carrots and forcing their kids to eat carrots, believing that they will improve your eyesight when they actually won't do that, because when a lie is believed as truth, it has the same effect as if it were true. Now, it's no big deal when it comes to carrots, right? It's probably actually a useful lie, if there is such a thing. But there are times when we believe much more significant lies that have much more significant implications for our lives. And some of you have accepted the lies that have been told to you by someone in your past, or the lies that you speak every day that come, I believe, from the evil one, because he wants to write a script from your life, for your life. And what if you buy into the lie that you'll never be good enough? What if you buy into the lie that God really doesn't care about you, or that you'll never be able to change? Because when you believe those lies, you give them power over your life. So every week during this series, we're addressing one of the lies that we believe and replacing it with the truth that will set you free. And so today I want to talk about a lie that I think is at the root of so many of our insecurities. A lie that if we believe it, it will hold us down, immobilize us, and keep us from living as the people that God has called us to be. And this is how the lie goes. It goes like this: I am not enough. And many people believe this lie, but we actually get more specific with it because we put a blank in the middle of that sentence. And we fill that blank in many different ways, depending on who we are and what we're struggling with. And maybe you've said this, maybe you've said it this way: I am not capable enough. Maybe you get a new job, and you start this new job, and you're convinced that you're not up to the task, and even worse, you're convinced that nobody around you thinks you're up to the task. And when all the other employees are in the break room talking and laughing, you assume that they're talking and laughing about you because you have convinced yourself, I am not capable enough. Or maybe for you it sounds like this: I am not smart enough. I'm not smart enough to help my kids understand their faith. I'm not smart enough to ever be, in a crowd of people who have high intellect. I'm just not smart enough. Or maybe for you it sounds like this: I am not strong enough. I'm not strong enough to resist this temptation. I'm not strong enough to forgive that person. Or I am not gifted enough. That may be what you think. I'm not gifted enough to serve in that area or to lead that team or to do this thing that I sense God is prompting me to do. Or you may say it this way: I am not patient enough. Like every parent has said this, right? One thing that will destroy your feelings of competence is having kids. I mean, and at some point you say, I'm just not patient enough for this. And at some point, we all tell ourselves this lie, and what we fill in that blank changes from person to person, and it can even change from day to day. And this is a lie that has the power to immobilize us and force us to spend our lives in meaningless activity and miss out on what God is really calling us to do. And I think at the root of so much wrong behavior and at the root of lives that are wasted is a belief in this particular lie. So today, I want to focus your attention on the story of a man in the Bible who believed this lie, and he's one of the most famous people in the Bible. His name is Moses. And even if you didn't grow up in church and you haven't really read much of the Bible, you're probably familiar with at least some of the story of Moses. In fact, most of us as Americans, we have an image in our minds of what Moses was like. And it's an image that doesn't come from the Bible, by the way. It's an image that comes from Hollywood. And one of the reasons for that is because every year since 1973, ABC has rebroadcast a movie called The Ten Commandments. And I remember growing up as a kid, and every Easter when they would broadcast it, we would watch it. It was like 3.5 hours long. And so I grew up with an image in my mind of Moses that looked like this. This is how I always thought of Moses. He's strong and he's muscular and he's good looking. He's got that awesome beard. He's the kind of leader that you think never had an ounce of self-doubt a day in his life. But then you read the Bible and you get a very different picture of who Moses was. You discover that he was a man who struggled sometimes. And who had some doubts about whether God could ever do anything with him, and he had insecurity. His story is told in the book of Exodus. And if you're not familiar with the Bible, here's a simple way to understand the book of Exodus. It's the second book of the Bible, Genesis, Exodus. Just think exit, okay? This is the story of the people of Israel exiting Egypt, exiting slavery, and then going on to the promised land that God would provide for them, okay? So backstory, the Jewish people, the people of Israel, had been slaves in Egypt for about 400 years. And in chapter 2 of Exodus, it says this: the Israelites groaned in their slavery and cried out, and their cry for help because of their slavery went up to God. And so God hears the prayers of his people, and he decides he's going to send someone to deliver them, to rescue them, to lead them out. And that person was Moses. But see, before Moses could deliver God's people, Moses had to be delivered from some things himself. Before he could set them free, God had to set him free from a lie that he believed. So here's how this goes. Chapter 3, beginning in verse 1. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the desert. So he's alone, he's isolated, and he came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There, the angel of the Lord appeared to him. And oftentimes, we don't really hear from God until we find ourselves in a place where all the distractions are gone, and we're quiet, and we're alone, and this is what happens to Moses. The angel of the Lord appeared to him in this really odd way in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight. Like, you don't see this every day. Why the bush does not burn up. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, here I am. Do not come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey. Like, this is going to be good. The home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites. It's also going to be tough. It's going to be good, but you're going to have to fight the good fight as you lead my people into this place that I have for them. And then verse 9, and now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I've seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. I want you to notice two phrases here. They're highlighted on the screens. The cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I am sending you. The cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I am sending you. God is saying, Moses, I want you to be the answer to the prayers of my people. Can I suggest something that may sound radical to you? Is it possible that God wants you to be the answer to someone's prayers? Is there someone that he's nudging you to reach out to? A place that he's nudging you to serve? Some way in which he's calling you to lead? Maybe even here in this church, maybe even on Thursday nights, I don't know what it is, but is there a way that God is nudging you to go forward, but you keep holding back? And is it possible that you might be the answer to someone's prayers if you'll simply go where God is calling you to do and go and do what God is calling you to do? So God says, Moses, I'm sending you. I'm choosing you to bring my people out of Egypt to be the answer to their prayers. Here's how Moses responds. Verse 11. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? I mean, this conversation has been very, very interesting, and I can't wait to tell my wife about the burning bush that never really burned up. And I really appreciate the interruption to my otherwise mundane existence out here with these sheep. But God, who am I that I should go? Which is actually a legitimate question. From a human perspective, that's a fair question. From a human perspective, Moses was not the ideal choice to do this job. And if you know the rest of his story, you know what happened to him leading up to this point. Moses actually at one point in his life lived in Egypt. He was raised as the adopted son of the king, the Pharaoh of Egypt. I mean, he had wealth, he had great education, he had power, he had connections, but he lost all of it in one decision. He flushed it all down the toilet in one act of anger. Because one day he was out and he saw one of his own people. He was Jewish. He saw one of the Israelites being mistreated by an Egyptian soldier, and his anger kicked up. He killed the soldier, buried him, tried to hide the body, but then it was discovered, and Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, wanted Moses dead, and so he has no option but to leave Egypt, run into the wilderness, and he's lived there now for 40 years as a fugitive. He found someone to marry, lives in his father-in-law's basement, takes care of his sheep. Not really the life he had intended for himself. His best years are behind him. And God comes to him and he says, Moses, I want you to go back to Egypt. I want you to confront the most powerful man in the world, and I want you to tell him you're taking away his free labor. And Moses says, you got the wrong guy. I am not enough. And I think here's what he would have meant by that. I'm not young enough. Like, God, if you had come to me 40 years ago, when I was still young and when I was strong and when I was optimistic, God, I could have done something then, but not now. I'm too old. I'm not young enough. Maybe he meant this. I'm not influential enough. God, have you forgotten the circumstances under which I left Egypt? I don't really have any connections there anymore. I'm a wanted man there. I'm not influential enough. Or I'm not eloquent enough. God, I barely even speak to people. You expect me to go speak to the most powerful man in the world and convince him to let go of all of this free labor? I'm not eloquent enough. God, I'm not experienced enough. The only thing I've ever led is a flock of sheep. I am not enough. And for some of you, this is the lie that you've been believing. You know that God has called you to do something. And you say, God, thanks for the invitation, but I am not enough. And I'll tell you what, I think we live in a world and in a culture today where this lie is just fueled every single day in our minds by the constant comparisons that we make with other people. That's facilitated in the day in which we live by social media, right? And so Facebook and Instagram and Twitter have made this 1,000 times worse, because no matter what you do, there's somebody out there that you can see on your phone who did it better than you, right? And so you're scrolling through your social media feeds and you see other people's families and other people's kids. And you say, I could never be that pretty. I could never be that fun. I could never be that creative. I could never be that witty. I'll never have a marriage like that. I'll never have kids like that. And it just fuels this sense, this lie. I am not enough. Now, believe me, I'm not against social media. We use it all the time around here as a church. It's a great tool. But you've got to understand what it is. It is not reality. It isn't. It's a facade. It's a lot of people just presenting the best versions of themselves. It's like getting somebody's Christmas letter every single day. Like, I don't mind getting your Christmas letter and hearing about all your great accomplishments, but like, now we get to see that every single day. And here's what is so defeating for us. We compare somebody else's public image with our private reality. And we say, God, I am not good enough, smart enough, beautiful enough, put together enough. Sometimes if I can keep going on this subject, like I need your permission, if I can keep going on this subject, sometimes I just wish we would put reality out there for everybody to see. Like, here's the image, right? Here's the image. We're going too many directions, so we're taking a break from baseball season this year. Hashtag let the kids be kids. Like, that is wonderful, but here's the reality that we don't put out there. I missed baseball signups for my son, and we had a huge fight over it. Hashtag too busy Facebooking. Like, that's the reality. You know, the image we put out there is this: we are taking a stand. No more iPad for the kids for a while. Hashtag family time. Oh, that is so virtuous. That is so good. Here's the reality. My kid dropped the iPad and broke it, and I lost my temper. Hashtag I sounded demon-possessed. Right? Here's the image, and this one always comes with a beautiful picture on the beach. Hawaii, vacation of a lifetime. Hashtag aloha. Yeah, here's the reality behind that. We'll be paying this off for the next 10 years. Hashtag way more broke than we look. Right? And the only point I'm trying to make is this: that we so often compare our private reality to somebody else's public image. We so often compare somebody else's highlight reels to our behind-the-scenes footage. We get so defeated, and we just say, I am not enough. I am not enough. And at least Moses didn't have to deal with that, right? So let's go back to his story. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? Now, I want you to notice how God responds to him. He doesn't give him a pep talk. He doesn't say, oh, come on, Moses, you're being too hard on yourself. He doesn't say, come on, Moses, I believe in you, now you need to believe in you. You need to discover your inner tiger, Moses. You need to go stand in front of a mirror and say 55 times, I am a bad man. And then you go confront Pharaoh. You know, he doesn't give him any kind of a pep talk. He doesn't say any of that. He just says these 5 life-changing, perspective-shifting words. And God said, I will be with you. Moses, you may feel like you aren't enough, and maybe you aren't, but that doesn't even matter. Because you're not going to be doing this alone. Because you are mine, and I am with you, and I will be sufficient in any area of your life that you are not. And here's what I want you to understand today as we talk about this lie and the truth behind it. Confidence, real confidence, does not come from tapping into your inner potential. It does not come from believing the best about yourself. I think real confidence comes from knowing how big and powerful God is and what his purposes are for your life, and then being swept up into those purposes. The message today that you walk away with, hopefully, is not that you are so awesome and you are so good and you are so special, or I am. You know, the message is this, that God is powerful and God is awesome. And when we put our lives completely in his hands, then amazing things happen. Then we can have confidence for whatever he calls us to. It's like a basketball. You know, a basketball in my hands, that's worth about $25. A basketball in the hands of Stephen Curry, that's worth $34 million a year. All depends whose hands it's in. A paintbrush in my hands, it's worth about $18. A paintbrush in the hands of Picasso created a piece of art that sold a couple of years ago for $100 million. Same paintbrush, it all depends on whose hands it's in. A golf club in my hands is dangerous. A golf club in the hands of Patrick Reed means a green jacket and $2 million at the Masters. It all depends whose hand it's in. It's not about the value of the object. It's about how valuable the object becomes when it's in the right hands. And this message is not about just how valuable you are, although you are valuable in the eyes of God. It's about what happens when we know that our lives are in his hands. When I know that God is with me, when I'm moving in his direction and following his will, when I'm in sync with him, when my life is fully in his hands, then I can have all the confidence in the world. And God just says, Moses, I will be with you. Pick up the conversation here, verse 13. So Moses goes on to say, okay, suppose I go. Don't you love that? It's like, okay, hypothetically, he's not saying yes. Suppose I do the whole go down to Egypt thing. Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you. And they ask me, okay, what is his name? Then what shall I tell them? So he's saying, hey, God, do you see how unqualified I am? I mean, I don't even know the most basic information here. If they were to ask me the name of the God who sent me to them, I wouldn't even know how to answer that question. So obviously, I am the wrong guy. I don't even know what name to give them. And God responds out of this burning bush, and he says something here that is so complex and so profound and yet so beautiful. In verse 14, God said to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you were to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. Excuse me? You're breaking up a little bit in the fire there. I am, and then it kind of cut out after that. I am has sent me to you. Now, these two words, I am, they're actually one word in the Hebrew language of the Old Testament. 4 Hebrew letters, consonants, no vowels. The closest thing in our English language would be YHWH. And this is the most common name for God found in the Bible. It's used over 6,000 times. And this name was so sacred to the Jewish people that they rarely even pronounced it out loud. Historians say that the best pronunciation is probably something like Yahweh. Yahweh. which is fascinating to me because a number of Hebrew scholars say that the pronunciation of this name sounds very, very similar to breathing. What's the first thing a baby does when it comes into this world? Draws a breath. What's the last thing you do when you leave this world? You take a final breath. It's your breath in our lungs. God is saying in this name, I am as essential to your life as the air that you breathe, and I am just as close. This word Yahweh, it literally means I am who I am, or I am who I always have been. It just captures this idea of God's eternal self-existence. I know this is very abstract and difficult to understand, so think of it this way. If I were to talk about myself, I might say this. A few days ago, I was in Lancaster. Today, I am in Scranton. In a few days, I will be in Pittsburgh. I was in Lancaster. I am in Scranton. I will be in Pittsburgh. Now, if God were to talk about himself in a similar fashion, he would say, a few days ago, I am in Lancaster. Today, I am in Scranton. In a few days, I am in Pittsburgh. I just am because I am. And long before this world began to exist, I am. And long after this world ceases to exist, I still am. I just am. And God is saying to Moses, Moses, I'm not like anything you've ever experienced. I have no needs. I don't require any help. I don't get tired. I have no limits. I do not have a beginning. I will not have an ending. I am unbounded and unchanging, always and forever the same. And so, Moses, I am not intimidated by Pharaoh. I am not limited by your limitations. And so, Moses, all of those things in your life that you think you're not enough of, I am. I am. And this conversation continues a little while longer, and eventually Moses is convinced that he is the man for the job, and God's going to be right there with him. And so I love how it ends in chapter 4. It's so simple. So Moses took his wife and sons, put them on a donkey, and started back to Egypt. And he took the staff of God in his hand, and he literally changed history. The man who said, I'm not enough. And so he leads the people of Israel out of Egypt, and then on their way to this promised land, Moses goes up on a mountainside and receives the law of God because they're this new community now. They're out from under oppression. They've got to know how God wants them to govern themselves. And so Moses gives them what we know as the 10 Commandments. And one of the 10 Commandments says this. It says, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. For the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. And when I was growing up in church, here's the way we understood that. Here's what that meant for us. It meant that we were never to use the name of God as an exclamation or a swear word, like, oh my God, or Jesus Christ in an exclamation kind of a sense. And that's a valid application of that commandment. But I think there might also be something deeper here as well. Because it doesn't just say you shall not use the name of the Lord your God in vain. It says you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Let me try to give you an analogy that may help us connect with the way that the Jewish people would have heard that. So in time past, there was a beautiful girl named Debbie Lynn Kiesling. The greatest day of her life was when she dropped her last name and took my last name, Debbie Lynn Stenzi. And when she took my name, that was more than just a change in her driver's license and her passport. That was the beginning of a relationship. We became one. What we did together. What we had together. There was no prenuptial agreement. You don't need one of those when you have $35 in your savings account. We were together. She took my name. And if you're a follower of Christ, the greatest day in your life was the day when you turned to him for forgiveness and asked him to come in and fix your messed up life. And on that day, what you did was you took his name. You are now one with him. Everything that he has, you have. The Bible describes it this way. We are partakers in the divine nature. And so I think maybe God would say this. He would say, when you take my name, I am, you are connected with me. And so when you fill in the blank with all kinds of things that I am not, then you're taking my name in vain. And so when you come up against the pharaohs in your life, when you come up against those things that are so challenging for you, and you hear that voice rising up inside of you that says, are you sure you're up to this? You say, I don't think I am, but I know I am. It's not up to me. See, here's the lie. Here's the lie that we believe. The lie is, I am not enough. And there's actually an element of truth to that. We're not enough for everything that God is calling us to do. But what makes this a lie is that it's only half the truth. It's only the bad news. It's not the good news. And I think we need to flip the script in our lives. I think we need to replace this lie with this truth and stop saying, I'm not enough, and start saying, I am not alone. Because you're going to say, I'm not good enough. To which God says, I am. I'm not smart enough. I am. I'm not capable enough. I am. I don't even know who's on my side anymore. I am. If my husband really walks out, who's going to take care of us? I am. What if the chemo isn't enough? I am. I don't even know if there's any truth out there. I am. I'm not even sure why I'm here in this world. I am. I don't feel like anybody's listening to me. I am. I just need somebody to hold me. I am. I always was. I always will be. I am. And of all the voices that we hear in our lives, the voice that we need to hear the loudest is the voice of the one who says, I am. And you will not be alone. Because the voice that you hear most clearly will be the voice that shapes your future most directly.